Okay, let's unpack this. Today we are plunging into the swirling cosmos of Norse mythology, right into the heart of, well, probably the most complex and central figure, Odin, the Allfather.
He really is. I mean, a
Mhm.
figure who embodies so many different identities
Yeah.
and profound contradictions,
Yeah.
way more than just the standard king of the gods idea.
Exactly. And we've pulled together a pretty fascinating stack of sources for this deep dive. Everything from the ancient mythological texts like the Eddas,
Hmm.
through historical mentions in Roman and Germanic records, some really incredible archaeological finds, right up to his, well, undeniable presence in modern culture.
Yeah, and our mission today really is to guide you through all this material, sort of moving beyond those maybe familiar pop culture portrayals
Right.
to reveal the full layered depth of Odin.
Think of this as your shortcut to being truly well-informed about the Allfather, his mystery, his power, his sacrifices, maybe even his darker side.
Yeah.
It's about getting to the core of who he is, and why he endures. So let's dive in.
Where do you even start?
Good question. So where do we begin with Odin? The sources paint him first and foremost as the supreme deity, the ruler of Asgard.
He is indeed the head of the pantheon, yeah. Sometimes called the Aesir, the principal gods in Norse myth. And his domain is incredibly vast and sort of interconnected. He's the god associated with wisdom, yes,
That's the big one.
but also war, poetry, magic, and even death. What's fascinating is how these seemingly quite different areas are often shown to be deeply linked through his actions.
And he has that instantly recognizable appearance, doesn't he? Often depicted as an old man, usually with a long beard, wearing a broad-brimmed hat, and always that missing eye.
Yes, that missing eye is definitely his defining physical characteristic in the myths. It's like a perpetual reminder of a huge sacrifice for knowledge. He's also a master shapeshifter, roaming the world in various disguises, often appearing as that one-eyed old man seeking wisdom or sometimes stirring up conflict.
And he's never really alone, is he? He's got his iconic companions. Tell us about Huginn and Muninn.
Thought and memory.
Yeah.
Yeah. The ravens who sit on his shoulders, they fly out across the 9 worlds every morning and come back by dinner to whisper everything they've seen and heard right into his ear. This is pretty key to his incredible knowledge and foresight.
So that's how he knows everything, basically through these avian informants.
Pretty much, yeah. And he also has his 2 wolves, Geri and Freki. He gives them all the food from his table, apparently, as he himself only needs wine to sustain him.
Interesting.
Yeah, it highlights his connection to that sort of primal wolf-like ferocity, which contrasts nicely with the more intellectual nature of the ravens.
And his ride. Not just any horse, I gather.
No, definitely not. Sleipnir, the magical 8-legged steed, supposedly capable of carrying him between worlds with, unmatched speed, and of course his mighty spear, Gungnir, which never misses its target.
Looking at this whole entourage, the ravens, the wolves, a multi-legged horse, a magical spear, it really paints a picture of a god whose influence spans, well, the mind, thought memory, physical power, wolves, spear, and even mobility between realms, Sleipnir.
It really does. And this multifaceted nature is also reflected in the sheer number of names attributed to him. I think it's over 170 in the sources. Each name kind of hints at a different aspect of his complex and, frankly, often contradictory character.
And the very root of his name gives us a major clue about his core nature, right? Linking back to the Proto-Germanic wuenas.
Absolutely. That root word means something like Lord of Frenzy, or perhaps Leader of the Possessed, and much later, Adam of Bremen, centuries later, would explicitly associate the Germanic Woden with the Latin term furor.
Fury, madness.
Exactly. Rage, fury, madness. And this isn't just about battle rage. It points to ideas of divine possession, ecstatic inspiration for poetry or prophecy, ecstatic divination, and that battle frenzy we see in warriors like the berserkers.
So the Allfather isn't just wise and powerful, he's fundamentally linked to a kind of divine, sometimes terrifying ecstasy or frenzy.
Exactly. That's really crucial to understanding him. And this connection to divine inspiration and knowledge leads us directly to his most defining myths, his relentless pursuit of wisdom, which always seems to come at a steep personal price.
Okay, this is where the story of the missing eye comes in.
Yes, the most famous sacrifice. He gave his eye to Mimir, the wise guardian of the Well of Wisdom, just for a single drink from its waters.
And that one drink gave him cosmic insight. It's such a powerful symbol, isn't it? The idea that true understanding needs you to give up something fundamental, leaving you permanently marked, maybe perpetually flawed in some way, even as you gain immense knowledge.
Definitely. But the sacrifices didn't stop there. To get the secrets of the runes, the universe's mystical alphabet and source of magic and truth, he performed an even more profound act of self-sacrifice.
He hung himself on the world tree Yggdrasil for 9 days and 9 nights.
Wounded by his own spear, yeah. A sacrifice of himself to himself. This act of self-inflicted ordeal, just hanging there between life and death on the cosmic axis, it kind of mirrors shamanistic practices you see in other cultures. And in Norse myth, it unlocked this unparalleled magical power and understanding of the universe's fundamental truths encoded in the runes.
That number 9 keeps popping up in Norse myth, doesn't it? Adds to the whole ritualistic weight. And it's worth noting that Yggdrasil itself probably means Odin's steed, right? Directly referencing this moment of him riding the tree like a gallows.
It links his act directly to the very structure of the cosmos, and it forever connects him to hanging and gallows. The Havamal, the poem that recounts this, notes that the hanged ride the gallows.
He also went on another quest for knowledge, retrieving the mead of poetry, which is also in Havamal, showing his hunger wasn't just for cosmic secrets or magic, but also for the inspiration behind art and song.
These myths really highlight a fundamental tension. Odin craves knowledge above absolutely everything else, even comfort, physical wholeness, or, basic safety.
So, yes, the seeker of wisdom, but like you said, equally defined by his association with war and death. He is undeniably the lore of battles.
Oh, for sure. His influence on conflict is central. He inspires warriors, particularly those like the berserkers, who enter that ecstatic, trance-like frenzy on the battlefield, seemingly just oblivious to pain. As scholar Dan McCoy points out, Odin's focus in war often isn't really on the reasons for the conflict or even the final outcome.
Really?
But on the battle frenzy itself, that pure, unleashed energy and ferocity.
And his interest goes beyond the fighting. He actively selects the bravest slain warriors from the battlefield.
That's the job of his Valkyries, whose name literally means something like choosers of the slain or ladies of the warlord. They bring these chosen heroes to his great hall in Asgard. Valhalla.
Valhalla sounds like the ultimate warrior's paradise, doesn't it? Feasting and fighting.
It is that, yeah, but the sources make it pretty clear it's more than just a reward. It's actually a strategic training ground. The Einherjar, the chosen warriors, spend their days fighting glorious battles, dying, and then being resurrected each evening to feast and train again.
Oh.
It's this relentless preparation for the ultimate battle, Ragnarok.
So it's a kind of afterlife boot camp, basically, directed by Odin. This also really solidifies his role as a psychopomp, a guide of souls to the afterlife.
And this connection to death and the movement of souls probably contributed to his later association with folklore traditions across Germanic Europe. Things like the Wild Hunt, that ghostly procession of the dead thundering across the sky, often led by a figure identified with Odin.
It's truly fascinating to see how this figure, so central to myth, doesn't just stay in the realm of stories, but leaves these echoes in actual historical records and archaeological finds across different times and places.
Yeah.
It really shows us that belief in him wasn't just confined to, say, the poetic Edda.
Absolutely. We see intriguing glimpses way back in the Roman era. Tacitus, in his work Germania, describes the religious practices of the Germanic tribes and equates their main male god with the Roman god Mercury. He's using Interpretatio Romana, that Roman practice of identifying foreign gods with their own.
And many scholars see Wood and Odin behind that Mercury comparison. Why Mercury, though?
Well, it's debated, but possible reasons include Mercury's role as a psychopomp, guiding souls, or maybe his association with travelers, merchants, and potentially cunning, all aspects we definitely see in Odin.
Then we get much clearer evidence later on.
Yes, arguably the earliest certain reference by name is on this tiny gold pendant, a 5th century Danish bracteid, inscribed simply with, "He is Odin's man." This tiny object gives us direct proof of devotion.
And across the English Channel, Woden is pretty prominent in Old English history.
Definitely. He shows up as a founding figure in the genealogies of Anglo-Saxon royalty, tracing their lineage back to the divine. He's also referenced in poetry, like the 9 herbs charm, where Woden helps heal by slaying a worm with 9 glory twigs, maybe echoing his 9-night ordeal on the tree, perhaps.
Interesting parallel. There are other poetic links, too, like the Os rune in the Old English rune poem, which means God, but is often linked by scholars specifically to Odin as the god of eloquence, connecting to his mead of poetry and maybe the eye sacrifice that unlocked that insight.
Moving over to the continent, we have records like the 7th century account from Jonas of Bobbio, who describes interrupting Germanic people offering beer to Vodano Odin in Swabia, again equating him with Mercury.
Right.
Later, in the 9th century, the old Saxon baptismal vow explicitly lists Odin among the gods that new converts had to renounce, alongside Thor and Freya. This shows he was actively worshipped.
And even later, that 10th century second Mersburg incantation calls directly on Udon to heal a sprained horse's leg, showing belief in his magical power outside of just war and wisdom context.
And then there's Adam of Bremen's 11th century description of the famous temple at Uppsala. He mentions a statue of Woden, described as ruling over war and receiving sacrifices, especially in times of conflict, and crucially associated with furor, that frenzy again.
It's incredible how these scattered texts piece together a picture of a widely acknowledged, powerful deity across centuries and regions.
It really is. And the archaeology adds another layer, giving us visual clues about how people might have actually imagined him.
What kind of visual evidence are we talking about?
Well, we have migration period gold braccates that show a figure with a spear riding a horse, often with birds overhead. Many interpret this as Odin with Huginn and Muninn on Sleipnir, maybe even depicting scenes related to healing or protection, which kind of connects back to that Mersburg incantation we just mentioned.
So not just abstract mentions in text, but actual attempts to portray him visually.
Exactly. Vendel period helmet plates from Sweden show similar figures, warriors with ravens and spears. And the Gotland image stones from the Viking Age, like the famous one from Jengvid, depict an 8-legged horse, almost certainly Sleipnir, often shown arriving at the world of the dead. It links Odin and his horse directly to the journey of souls.
Are there also smaller, more personal items found?
Yes, things like bird-shaped brooches from Denmark, which some scholars think might represent Huginn and Muninn. Some even incorporate little face masks, possibly showing Odin in disguise. And that famous small figurine from Rebe, sometimes called the Odin from Leisurely, clearly shows a helmeted figure with bird ornaments on his helmet. A very tangible depiction.
And later stone carvings as well.
Yes, pieces like Thorwald's cross on the Isle of Man or the Ledberg stone in Sweden potentially depict scenes related to Ragnarok, maybe Odin being devoured by the wolf Fenrir. It shows that knowledge of his ultimate fate was present even in art.
Wow, that must have been a powerful image for believers back then.
It connects his end directly to the visual culture. And finally, there's the enigmatic Valknut symbol, those 3 interlocking triangles, which is widely associated with Odin. Hilda Ellis Davidson connected it to his power over mental bonds, the ability to inspire warriors with frenzy or paralyze enemies with fear, and also his association with sacrificial death and cremation practices.
So these historical and archaeological finds really bring home that this wasn't just some character in old stories. People across Northern Europe really believed in, visualized, and interacted with the idea of Odin for centuries.
They'd absolutely confirm his widespread importance and give us hints about the nuances of his worship and perception that maybe the written sources alone might miss.
Okay, so despite all this power, this wisdom, and all the evidence of veneration, the sources don't exactly shy away from portraying a much darker, more complex side to Odin, do they? He's far from a simple, benevolent god-king.
No, not at all. He's a master of deception, trickery, manipulation. His relentless pursuit of knowledge often involves pretty ruthless methods, even against other gods sometimes. He uses disguise not just to observe, but to actively interfere and stir up conflict. His motives could be incredibly obscure.
It sounds like trustworthiness wasn't exactly top of his list of virtues to embody.
Not necessarily, no. He seems to prioritize the gain of knowledge and power above all else. We also see this in his practice of Seiðr magic. While it was seen as immensely powerful, some sources describe it as unseemly and effeminate, which really challenged the conventional masculine ideals of Norse society at the time.
And yet he embraced it.
He did. As William Short notes, despite potentially questioning his masculinity in the eyes of some, Odin embraced Seiðr for the unparalleled knowledge and power it offered. It just shows his willingness to transgress social norms if it meant greater understanding or control.
And this willingness to embrace the unconventional, maybe even the taboo, is kind of mirrored in his complex, often volatile relationship with the trickster god Loki.
Exactly. I mean, Loki causes immense chaos and suffering, often directly impacting the other gods. But sometimes, weirdly, Loki's actions inadvertently seem to serve Odin's larger, often hidden goals, or maybe contribute to events leading towards Ragnarok. It's a strange partnership, perhaps built on mutual necessity and a shared disregard for conventional order, despite all the destruction it causes.
Perhaps the most poignant aspect of Odin's whole story is that for all his power, his wisdom, his preparations, He knows his ultimate fate.
That's the shadow that really hangs over the Allfather, isn't it? He knows about Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, the prophesied end of the entire cosmos.
And you can really see how all his actions, the sacrifices he made, the gathering of the Einherjar in Valhalla, that endless quest for knowledge and power, they're all preparations for this final, unavoidable confrontation. He's basically fighting against destiny, building an army, seeking every possible advantage, even while accepting its inevitability.
And his prophesied death is specific and, well, brutal. He will be swallowed whole by the monstrous wolf Fenrir during the final battle. It's a really powerful, tragic image, the highest god consumed by chaos.
Though it's important the sources also tell us he won't be the last word, so to speak. His son VR will avenge him immediately after.
That's right. And after the world is destroyed and then renewed, a new generation of gods will emerge. The sources say these surviving gods will gather and recall Odin's deeds and the ancient runes he sacrificed so much to obtain. So his influence kind of echoes even beyond the end of his world.
And his echoes certainly continue in our world today.
Absolutely. He's venerated in modern heathenry. He continues to influence fine art, literature, music. I mean, think Wagner's portrayal of Wotan in The Wing Cycle.
And he's just a huge figure in popular culture, instantly recognizable in everything from Marvel's Avengers to American Gods, video games, countless other places.
And of course, for millions of us, every single week, he gave us a day Wednesday, which comes directly from Woden's Day.
So when you look at all these layers, the wise Allfather who sacrificed his eye, the frenzied warrior who hung himself for runes, the cunning deceiver who embraces magic, others scorned, the destined victim preparing for an unwinnable fight.
Odin remains perhaps one of the most captivating and deeply complex figures in all of mythology. He just embodies profound contradictions, wisdom and cunning, creation and destruction, foresight and sacrifice.
His myths offer these incredible insights into the cost of knowledge, the nature of fate, and that intricate, often murky relationship between power and responsibility. He truly earned the title Allfather, didn't he? Not just through might, but through this relentless, often painful quest for understanding and his mastery over such disparate forces.
He's almost a mirror to the complex, sometimes contradictory nature of existence itself.
So reflecting on his endless pursuit of wisdom and power, and his known tragic fate swallowed by Fenrir, what does Odin's story tell you about the true meaning of strength, or maybe the limits of trying to defy destiny? What really stands out to you?